Got tomorrow for a quick Tuesday tip. I always get asked quite often in my classes and workshops, Scott, should I be shooting in RAW or JPEG? So I just wanted to touch base on that really quickly. The difference, you first need to understand what the difference between the two is. So RAW is basically the raw footage coming from the sensor of your camera. It's going to have all of the information in there, all of your camera settings in there, all of the metadata in the file. Everything is in there as when you recorded the data. They are much larger files because of that, right? So raw files will take up more space on your card. They are normally much larger than a JPEG file. For instance, in my Sony A7R III, the raw files are coming in the 30 megs, 39 megs, something range, where JPEGs are going to be, maybe a meg, 2 meg, 3 meg, something like that. Now your JPEGs are much smaller in size. They're basically compressed, and you're getting what the camera thinks you want to show. So if you're actually looking at a raw file or a JPEG on the LCD on your camera, they actually look the same because your camera is interpreting that information and showing that to you. That's not exactly what's going on in the file. So there's two reasons to use, well, there's reasons to use one or the other. Me personally, I shoot raw in everything because I do editing afterwards. If you want to be able to adjust the color space, if you want to be able to adjust the white balance and stuff more thoroughly in a software such as Lightroom, which I use, you want to use raw because all of that data is there that you can manipulate in your editing software. You don't have that ability in JPEG. You can to an extent, but when you're making adjustments, you're adjusting more of the photo, and things are very fine-tuned. You can't really do a lot with the JPEG. So why would you use a JPEG then? One is if you're shooting high-speed photography, if you're shooting sports, wildlife, those type of things, and you've got your settings where you're not going to do a lot of editing to it. You might just edit it, maybe touch up a little bit, maybe just a quick little exposure change or maybe a white balance change, no major editing that you're doing, then JPEG is the right thing. And the reason why is your cameras have a buffer. So when you're high speed shooting and you're shooting like a machine gun, every camera is different, but you can shoot until your buffer fills up. Some cameras have a larger buffer than others. And what that buffer is, it tells you how many photos it can take before it has to start writing to the card. So the faster the card you have in and the faster your camera writes to that card, then the more you can just continuously shoot, right? So if you're shooting a very large file like RAW, that's a lot more data that has to get pushed to the card. Whereas if you're shooting very small file size like a JPEG, that gets pushed over much quicker. So you're less likely to reach your buffer limit if you're shooting in JPEG, which means you can pretty much machine gun the entire time until your card fills up. So I shoot in RAW all the time unless I'm shooting high speed stuff like that. The reason is I want all of that. And yes, they're bigger files, but storage these days is extremely affordable. And so I shoot everything in RAW. I like that control. So that's the answer to the question. That's what I do. That's some of the answers to the RAW versus JPEG in my world. That's what I recommend. That's my workflow, and it seems to work out really well. But let me know your thoughts. If you like these tips, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Follow me on Facebook or Instagram, and have a great day. See you next time.